Welcome back to the Fairway Performance Podcast. My name is Sean Dykoff and I'm your host for this show. And my goal for this show is to help you improve your best asset on the golf course, to help you play better golf without having to change your swing and without having to buy, expensive and fancy equipment. On today's episode of the podcast, I am going over a topic that I recorded many, many weeks ago. This is almost like 2.5 to 3 years ago. And there's some things which I just wanted to update and create a little more clarity on as opposed to the episode that I recorded a long time ago. And things have changed in my business where I actually work differently with clients due to all the things that I've learned over the past essentially 3 years that I've been doing more one-to-one work instead of, working with the masses of golfers. So on this episode, we're talking about how to build out a program if you're looking to start your golf fitness journey and just what are the things that you should take into account and how you should go about building it out. So the first thing I want to talk about, or section 1, is the foundation or understanding the intersection of fitness and golf. So your physical fitness is obviously tied to how well you're going to play golf, because if you start to break down and you're unable to play a full 18 holes without being injured, tired, sore, just unable to finish the round, then obviously during the round, you're going to be working at a maximal capacity. So it's going to be really hard for you to finish that thing. And when we're exerting maximal effort within activities, we're obviously diminishing our performance. So it's why they have the saying, train hard, play easy. So we train in situations or scenarios that are harder than what we'll actually experience during the sport that we play. So we can do the same with our golf. The things that I like to remind people about is while we might be training hard and building certain facets of fitness, we're not just training hard for the sake of it. We want to be measured and tactical in our approach, because we know what things we are rewarded for when we play golf, and that's the mobility that we have, the stamina that we have, the power and speed that we have, and the mobility and flexibility that we have. So if we've got all of those things, then we can obviously build a program to maximize our ability to do all of that stuff, or to have all of those facets or traits. And we can forego some of the other things like, long distance running or max cardio or VO2 or these types of things. While there's some importance for longevity and other factors, if we're focusing specifically on improving our golf game, obviously we're not going to be also doing stuff that would help us, run a marathon or do half marathons or something like this, ultra running. So that's what we need to think about, the certain facets that we're rewarded for to be better as golfers. The second thing is, where should we start and what starting point are you coming at this fitness thing from? And I like to think of it as a beginner, intermediate, or advanced. And the reason I break it into those things is because there's a certain level of volume, there's a certain level of intensity, and there's a certain level of experience and technicality that we can use with the movements in the gym based on someone's start point. So if you're a beginner, obviously we can't be doing anything too technical, because you just haven't got the movement patterns and built the strength and coordination in the movement patterns. We can't be doing too much volume, because if we do too much volume, you're just going to break down and be too sore and just unable to play golf. So we need to meet your needs there. And then thirdly, intensity. Like volume and intensity are very similar, but intensity can be many things, like the weight being used. It can be the time period between exercises, or it could just mean like the time period for the total training session. So there's multiple different pieces to intensity that we can think about, but that's just the main and overarching principles there. So the main thing though is with each stage, the beginner, intermediate, or advanced, you can't go wrong getting strong. You can't go wrong getting more strong or getting more mobile as a golfer. The reason I say that is because getting stronger means that we're building muscle mass, or we're just getting stronger in general. We're able to lift and produce more power and output more power and force, which then enables us to have the potential to produce more speed and power. So getting stronger is going to help you with that. Getting more mobile just means that you're going to be able to exceed the demands of what your swing is asking you to do, or what the game of golf is asking you to do, which means that your likelihood for injury significantly decreases. The next thing, so let's think about rotational exercises, like what sort of training splits people can use, how to schedule those things in. So if we're thinking about what sort of exercises to do, I like to think of this and this is the way that I work with clients in my individual or VIP training, is we do it in 3 phases together. So essentially the first phase is the bomber's foundations. The second phase is the bomber's strength. And then the third phase is the bomber's speed and power. And the reason I have it in those three phases is because we can think of that like a full season of golf. If we were to do 3 to 4 months worth of each of those styles of training, we're going to have our pre-season sorted, we're going to have our in-season sorted, and we're going to have our off-season sorted. And I'm not going to go into like what each of those would look like now and how that would all work, because it's very different for a lot of people. At this point in time, it is the 7th of October in 2024. So there's a lot of golfers that I work with in the northeast of the US, into Canada and the UK and Europe, that are all looking to go into their off season at the moment. So that's what we're designing programs and talking about in our training at the moment. Whereas my Australian clients, they're playing golf year round, unless you're from Melbourne or Tasmania, where they may have a little bit of an off season if it gets a little bit too cold and they just choose not to play. Courses generally aren't shut in Australia for the fact of the weather being a determinant or deterrent. So what are some other strategies and things that we can implement for someone who's a beginner versus intermediate and advanced? Like, how do we think about the training? So now, obviously, someone who's a beginner, they would spend a little more time in the foundations, the bomber's foundations, purely because the larger the base that we build, the higher the building, or the higher the structure that we can build off that. Whereas the people who are more advanced, they've spent a bit more time in that foundation building, or at least I assume most of them have, until we go through a TPI assessment and a movement assessment on the first call as onboarding as a new client for me. So we'll check that out. And for most people, like everyone will go through some form of foundational phase, because it's often the experienced guys or the advanced guys or girls will have done a lot of the foundational stuff, and then they've foregone that and done a lot of sexy golf specific rotational speed and power training, but they haven't done any foundational stuff for a while. So in that foundational phase, we go back and we work on unilateral exercises to even out the body. We work on mobility. We work on a little bit of golf-specific stuff, but it's mainly to build a bit of muscle, tissue tolerance, movement patterning, so that when we do start to go heavier and more golf-specific later, I know that they've got that foundation under their belt to build, essentially they've got a larger base to build upon. We've just, added a few more stones to that thing, or a few more square meters of concrete to really reinforce it, or square feet if you're from the northern hemisphere. So, and once we do that, we can actually then think about, what sort of performance layers to go on top of it. For the more beginner people, obviously they're going to spend a bit more time in the foundations, particularly if they haven't trained before. It's just really good. I love the foundational stuff, because we're just the set and rep style that I follow is very hypertrophy based. Hypertrophy, depending on how you say it. Because of that, we're doing sets of 8 to 12 to 15 or even 20 for some clients, depending on their level of experience with hypertrophy. And what I find with that is, because they're doing lots and lots of repetitions, each side of the body, they're building symmetrical strength or even amounts of strength each side. So it evens out a lot of injuries, but also just builds really good movement patterns, because they're sending me videos of themselves doing these movements. I can watch, give feedback, and then they know they're on the right track for that period of time to actually, be getting the most from every drop of sweat that they put into the gym or into their training sessions. Every minute they're in there, every repetition they're doing is moving them towards their goal and, furthering that foundation building that we're talking about. The next thing, so the strength, like when we start, going down the list or like building the blocks on top of each other, when we talk about strength, we're moving to like bilateral exercises at that point in time. So we're thinking, getting the barbell in your hand versus dumbbells. And at this point in time, we can increase the weight and decrease the repetitions, because for strength work, we need to be in the 1, 3, 5, 7 rep range. I don't like to go down to the 1 to 3 rep range unless someone really needs it. It just, if we think about, I talked about a strength and a stability continuum last week. If we think about it as an injury versus results standpoint, the further we go up with weight, obviously the further up we go with injury risk. The lower down we come with weight, the lower we come with injury risk. So it's a direct proportion to how heavy you're lifting, how technical you're lifting, as to like what level of the continuum you're sitting on there. So unless you really need to go up there and you've got the experience, I don't want to be increasing your injury risk for the sake of, maybe like marginally extra gains. We can get away with going higher reps for strength work in the 5 to 7 rep range, while still getting really good carryover for strength, versus doing 3 to 5 reps, so going much lower, which then the weight would have to increase significantly, like 30 to 40% it would increase if we're going to go down, 2 to 4 reps from 7 down to 3. You can increase the weight a lot there. So just thinking about it on that continuum. But in that phase, that bomber's strength phase, what we're really looking at there is just turning some of the muscle we've built, the fact that our body is symmetrical in strength side to side or muscle side to side, and our coordination is there with a lot of these movements. We can start putting more weight on, which just recruits more motor units. To get a little nerdy with it, it recruits more motor units. Recruiting more motor units makes you stronger and more powerful because they're all working together. So it's coordination aspects, but it's also like recruiting the muscle fibers together to fire for a particular thing. So getting the whole body and the whole, posterior chain and everything working for like an explosive, standing up out of a deadlift with a heavy bar, jumping out of a squat with a heavy weight on our back or our shoulders in a front squat, stuff like this. So having those motor units all firing together, or type 2 or type 2X fibers, like whatever the research is calling these days, the fast twitch fibers essentially, is what we're trying to build there, or trying to develop there, because then that's going to convert to more potential for speed and power in the future. When I say potential, because it doesn't mean you get stronger and more, or it doesn't mean you get more speed and power. It just gives you the potential for it. We then have to go away and do either over speed or overload work in order to, get the most from that. Now, the last couple of things is scheduling your training week, and then the commitment and consistency that it takes. So when scheduling out a training week, every person is their own unique little snowflake. We've all got the different demands, the different things that life is, pulling us in all these different directions. So we need to take all of these factors into account. So for some clients of mine, they're training on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I'm thinking of a guy in Melbourne who's doing this. Then for some, it's like Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday for 3 sessions a week. It's very dependent on, what is going on in their lives and what they're doing outside of their golf and their training and their family and everything else, so that we can blend all of those things together. Because essentially, I want to, when I build out these individualized programs, and I know I've actually just gone down the route of talking about them a lot, but this is how we build programs and what I'm thinking about to build them. So hopefully it's giving you some insight as to like how you can be thinking about how to build this program or these programs out for yourself, if that's your goal, is working out like, cool, 3 days a week, sure, the results won't come as fast as if I did 4 days a week, but I'm not going to burn out. I'm going to allow myself to practice and play golf. I'm going to allow myself to spend a little bit of time with family and friends, and that's just going to keep me in a better mood and more motivated for those 3 sessions that I do get in the gym. So I look forward to, instead of have to go and do 4 sessions this week, you're thinking along the lines of, I get to do 3 sessions this week. When we can start thinking about that, that's how I feel about it. I get to play, 1 or maybe 1.5 rounds of golf a week, like 18 holes and 9 holes. Not at the moment, but I have done in the past. But I get to do that, and then I get to go to the gym 3 or get to go 4 times a week, rather than I have to go 3 or 4 times a week. If we can flip the script on that, it really helps with your long-term commitment and consistency to training. So just a little like psychological thing to be thinking about there. You don't have to do things, you get to do things. We live in a privileged society where we get to do this sort of stuff. Now, that's all I really want to go over, just to like rehash and wrap a little bow on some of the points here. So we're thinking the foundation, so understanding what things we're rewarded for in our playing of golf, so that the things that we're doing in the gym are going to be reflected on the course. That doesn't mean doing swinging practice in the gym. It means building facets of our body, like mobility, strength, unilateral strength, or unilateral muscle and evening out sides of the body, as well as stability and mobility, stability and flexibility. I said mobility first. So if we're building all of those facets of the body, we're building ourselves into a more athletic person. That is going to translate into the ability to last longer, play better, and have the potential to shoot better scores on the course. Where to start with your training? You can't go wrong getting strong. And I talked about the foundational phase, the strength phase, and the speed and power phase as 3 different phases to layering, that big building, one block on top of the other, so that we can obviously get the most from our training and the best results from our programs. And then we talked about the difference between beginner, intermediate, advanced, and then we also talked about how you'd schedule that through the week. So whether it ends up being 3 days a week or 4 days a week, I didn't talk about specifics for volume and how much you should be doing and whether it should be 3, 4, 5 sets. If you do have questions on that, I'd love to hear them, and please shoot them through either in the YouTube comments, which this will be on YouTube, or in the podcast comments as well on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. You can also shoot me a DM on Instagram. My handle is at Sean, SHAUN .Diakoff, DIACHKOFF. Or you can also email me, Sean@fairwayperformance.com. Any of those methods, I'm super responsive. It's just me running this business, currently me just running this business, and I respond to every comment, every email, all of those things. So if you have any questions or this episode has brought up any questions, shoot them through. I'd love to hear it. Until next time, guys, make sure to train hard, enjoy your time out on the course, and shoot some good scores. And I'll talk to you all next week.